The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air at Sunshine Diner, where the night shift was anything but ordinary. Rain tapped against the windows as Ming worked her usual graveyard shift, her worn sneakers squeaking against the checkered floor as she moved between tables. The clock on the wall showed 2:30 a.m., but the diner never slept. It was a beacon for night owls, truck drivers, and lost souls seeking comfort in a warm meal. Ming had a way of making every customer feel like they were sitting at their grandmother's kitchen table. "Here's your coffee, extra hot," she'd say with a genuine smile that reached her eyes, even after 8 hours on her feet. What most customers didn't know was that while she poured their coffee, she was silently composing melodies in her head. The regulars had their own special names for her: the singing waitress, the nightingale of Sunshine Diner, the girl with starlight in her voice. When the diner got quiet, usually around 3 a.m., her humming would float through the air like a lullaby. Old Mr. Wu, who came in every night for his chamomile tea, often closed his eyes and smiled when she sang while refilling the sugar dispensers. Tonight was different, though. The storm outside had grown stronger, driving more people than usual into the warm embrace of the diner. A group of college students huddled in one corner, their laptops open and textbooks spread across the table as they crammed for tomorrow's finals. Ming brought them a fresh pot of coffee on the house, remembering her own dreams of music school that she couldn't afford. At the counter, a truck driver named Bobby shared stories about his cross-country adventures while Ming topped off his coffee cup. "Kid," he said, wiping his mustache with a napkin, "my route takes me to every diner from here to Chicago, but ain't nobody makes apple pie like you do." His words made her chest swell with pride. The recipe was her grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations. Between serving plates of midnight breakfast specials and warming up coffee cups, Ming would catch her reflection in the chrome of the coffee machines. Her ponytail was coming loose, and her apron had a small syrup stain from an earlier spill, but her eyes still sparkled with determination. Every tip she earned went into a jar labeled Dream Fund, hidden beneath her bed. The vintage jukebox in the corner, with its neon lights casting a soft glow, played old classics that Ming knew by heart. When Moon River came on, she couldn't help but sing along softly while wiping down tables. A young couple, seeking shelter from the rain, stopped their conversation to listen. The girl pulled out her phone, but Ming didn't notice. She was lost in the music, turning a simple cleaning task into something magical. Her coworker, the cook everyone called Pop, watched her from the kitchen window with fatherly pride. He'd been there for 10 years, watching Ming grow from a shy teenager into a confident young woman who could handle even the rowdiest late-night crowds with grace. "That voice of yours is wasted on these walls," he'd tell her, flipping pancakes with expert precision. But Ming never saw it as waste. Every person who walked through those doors had a story, and she was part of it, even if just for a cup of coffee or a slice of pie. The diner was her stage, the coffee pot her microphone, and every customer her audience. She might not have known it yet, but her biggest break was just around the corner, waiting to walk through those door chimes she'd heard 1,000 times before. As the storm continued to rage outside, Ming grabbed her cleaning cloth and headed to another table, humming a tune she'd been working on between orders. The night was still young, and in this little corner of the world, anything felt possible. Even dreams that seemed as distant as the stars she glimpsed through breaks in the storm clouds. The rain hadn't let up for hours, and the windows of Sunshine Diner were foggy with condensation. Ming had just finished brewing a fresh pot of coffee when the bell above the door chimed. A gust of wind swept in along with a man who looked completely out of place in the humble diner. His expensive leather shoes squeaked against the linoleum floor, and his tailored suit jacket was spotted with raindrops. "Rough night to be out," Ming said, already reaching for a coffee cup. The man looked like he hadn't planned to end up here. Most people in designer suits didn't randomly stop at a roadside diner at 3 a.m. "My car's GPS went haywire in the storm," he said, running a hand through his graying hair. I don't suppose you know how to get back to downtown from here. He introduced himself as Mr. Lee, a music producer who'd gotten lost after leaving a recording studio in the valley. Ming placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. The highway's closed due to flooding, she said, remembering the traffic alert she'd heard earlier. You might be stuck here for a little while. Can I interest you in some apple pie while you wait? It's still warm from the oven. The old jukebox clicked and whirred, switching to a classic jazz tune. Ming automatically started humming along as she cut a generous slice of pie. Her voice melded perfectly with the saxophone solo, years of practice making it seem effortless. Mr. Lee stopped mid-sip, his coffee cup hovering inches from his mouth. Do that again, he said, his eyes suddenly alert despite the late hour. Do what? Ming asked, sliding the pie plate in front of him. Sing, just like you were doing just now. Ming felt her cheeks warm. She was used to the regulars commenting on her singing, but something about Mr. Lee's intense focus made her nervous. Still, the music was playing, and it was one of her favorites. She began to sing along softly while wiping down the counter, her voice carrying over the sound of rain beating against the windows. Pop stuck his head out from the kitchen, spatula in hand. He'd seen plenty of smooth-talking strangers pass through, making big promises to young dreamers. But something about Mr. Lee's quiet attention was different from the usual hustlers. Young lady, Mr. Lee said when the song ended, I've spent 30 years in the music industry, and I rarely hear raw talent like yours. Tell me, have you had any formal training? Ming laughed, but it was tinged with a hint of sadness. Unless you count singing along to my grandmother's old records, no. Couldn't afford it. She refilled his coffee cup. But the diner's been my school. You learn a lot about music when you hear the same jukebox songs every night for 5 years. Mr. Lee pulled out his phone and pushed it across the counter. On the screen was the homepage of Rainbow Records, one of the biggest independent labels in the city. There he was in the staff photo, standing next to some of the most famous names in the industry. I'm heading to the studio tomorrow afternoon to hear some demos, he said, pulling a business card from his wallet. Come by around 2. Bring a song you love and a song you've written. Let's see what you can do. Ming stared at the card in her hand, her heart racing. She'd seen enough movies to know that opportunities like this seemed too good to be true. But she'd also never seen anyone order a $3,000 suit with a side of diner apple pie. I can't just, she started to say, but Pop's voice interrupted from the kitchen. She'll be there, he called out, making both Ming and Mr. Lee smile. I'll cover your shift myself. The storm outside began to ease, but Ming's mind was spinning faster than ever. As she watched Mr. Lee leave a generous tip and head back into the night, she couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment every dreamer waited for. When the ordinary suddenly became extraordinary, all because of a wrong turn in the rain. The next morning, Ming sat on the edge of her bed, staring at Mr. Lee's business card as sunlight streamed through her tiny apartment window. Her night shift uniform hung on the bathroom door, smelling of coffee and French fries. The dream that had always felt so distant suddenly seemed within reach, and that terrified her more than any late-night rush at the diner. Her phone buzzed with encouraging messages from her diner family. Pop had already texted twice. Don't you dare chicken out. And I made you extra lucky pancakes. Come get them before your audition. Even old Mr. Wu, who barely knew how to send texts, had somehow managed to send her a string of music note emojis. Ming's hands trembled as she pulled out her grandmother's old songbook, its pages yellow with age and spotted with cooking stains. She'd been writing her own songs in the margins for years, between taking orders and serving plates. Some were scribbled on napkins, others on the back of old receipts. Pieces of her heart scattered across paper scraps. At the diner, Pop had her lucky pancakes waiting, decorated with banana slices in the shape of a smile. Eat, he commanded, sliding the plate across the counter. Can't sing on an empty stomach. The regular customers who knew about her upcoming audition kept giving her thumbs up. making her both grateful and nervous. The bus ride to Rainbow Records felt like traveling to another world. She clutched her songbook, watching the neighborhood shops give way to sleek office buildings. The studio building rose before her like a glass mountain, its windows reflecting the clouds above. Inside, the lobby was filled with platinum records and music memorabilia that made her diner uniform feel even more out of place in her backpack. "I'm here to see Mr. Lee," she told the receptionist, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman looked up, probably used to seeing aspiring singers in designer clothes, not someone in worn sneakers and a second-hand dress. The elevator ride to the 7th floor gave Ming time to doubt everything. What if Mr. Lee had just been tired last night? What if her voice wasn't actually special? What if she was about to make a fool of herself? The ding of the elevator interrupted her spiral of worry. Mr. Lee was waiting in a room with walls covered in acoustic panels. A simple microphone stood in the center, looking both inviting and intimidating. "I was worried you might not come," he said warmly, gesturing for her to enter. "Many people talk about their dreams, but few have the courage to chase them." "I almost didn't," Ming admitted, clutching her songbook. "But then I realized I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering what if." "That's exactly the attitude we look for." Mr. Lee smiled, introducing her to the sound engineer, a kind-faced woman who reminded Ming of her favorite aunt. "Now, what song did you bring?" Ming pulled out a wrinkled paper from her songbook. "I wrote this one during my breaks at the diner. It's called Midnight Light." The song had come to her while watching the city lights through the diner windows, thinking about all the dreamers like her who were still awake, still trying. As she began to sing, the world around her faded away. There was no fancy studio, no record producer, just her and the music, just like at the diner. Her voice filled the room with stories of late-night conversations, endless cups of coffee, and dreams that refused to die. When she finished, the silence in the room felt heavy. Balancing two dreams wasn't easy. Ming's days now started with vocal training at 9 a.m., right after her night shift ended at the diner. Some mornings, her voice was hoarse from talking to customers all night, and the vocal coach would shake her head with concern. But Ming refused to give up either world. The diner had been her first stage, and she wouldn't abandon it. The regulars at Sunshine Diner had become her unofficial street team. Bobby, the truck driver, proudly showed everyone the video he'd recorded of her singing while serving pie last month. The clip had gotten over 10,000 views, with comments asking where they could hear more. The college students who came in for late-night study sessions had created a fan page called Sunshine's Singing Server, complete with blurry photos and shaky videos of her impromptu performances. "You look tired, kid," Pop said one night, sliding a plate of his special scrambled eggs across the counter. Dark circles had formed under Ming's eyes, and her usual bounce was a little slower. She had spent the afternoon recording demos, then rushed straight to her shift without sleeping. "I'm okay," she insisted, but her yawn gave her away. "Just need to figure out how to be in two places at once." She had already mixed up 3 orders that night, something she hadn't done since her first week as a waitress. The next evening, she arrived at work to find a surprise. The regular customers had organized a schedule among themselves. Mr. Wu had spread the word through his senior citizens group, and they would come in earlier to clear out before the dinner rush. The college students rearranged their study sessions to cover her busiest hours. Even the truck drivers adjusted their routes to stop by when she had more time to sing. "We're not losing our singing waitress just yet," Pop announced proudly, watching Ming wipe away tears of gratitude. The diner had become more than just a workplace. It was a family looking out for one of their own. But the music industry had its own demands. Mr. Lee was patient, but firm about what needed to be done. "Your voice is special," he would say during recording sessions, "but raw talent isn't enough. We need to polish it without losing what makes it real." The studio became her second home, filled with endless takes and vocal exercises. Sometimes she would practice the same line 50 times until it was perfect. Her throat lozenges became as essential as her waitress notepad. Between takes, she would write new lyrics on napkins she'd borrowed from the diner. Old habits died hard. One night, while serving coffee to a group of tired nurses, Ming's new single played on the radio for the first time. The whole diner fell silent. Pop turned up the volume, and everyone listened to her voice singing about chasing dreams and never giving up. When it ended, the applause was so loud that people walking past outside stopped to see what was happening. "That's our girl," Pop said proudly, his eyes suspiciously wet. "That's our Ming." But success brought new challenges. Some regular customers started bringing friends just to hear her sing, making it harder to focus on her actual job. Others would the news hit like a dropped plate during dinner rush. Ming was cleaning the diner's coffee machine when Mr. Lee called. His voice was heavy as he explained that Rainbow Records was facing a financial crisis. The parent company had pulled their funding, and all new artist projects were being put on hold, including her debut single. The coffee pot slipped from her hands, but Pop caught it before it could shatter. He didn't need to hear the phone conversation to know something was wrong. Ming's face said it all. "Take 5, kid," he said gently, leading her to the empty booth in the corner, the same one where she'd sat during her job interview 5 years ago. "Everything we recorded," Ming explained, her voice barely a whisper. "All those hours in the studio, it's just sitting there now. They can't afford to release it." The dream that had felt so close was suddenly frozen in digital files on some computer, gathering virtual dust. The regulars noticed the silence first. Ming wasn't singing while she worked anymore. Her smile was there, but it didn't reach her eyes. The tips of her fingers were red from gripping the coffee pot too tightly, trying to hold onto something solid when everything else felt like it was slipping away. A week passed, then 2. The diner's regulars watched their singing waitress struggle to find her voice again. Bobby, the truck driver, tried to cheer her up by requesting her favorite songs on the jukebox, but she just smiled and refilled his coffee. The college students who'd created her fan page kept asking when they could hear her new music. She didn't have the heart to tell them the truth. Then one quiet Tuesday night, something changed. A young girl came in with her mother, both looking tired after what seemed like a long day. As Ming brought them the video that changed everything wasn't shot in a fancy studio or with expensive cameras. It was filmed on a busy Saturday morning at the diner, when Ming was serving her regular breakfast crowd. She was carrying a stack of pancakes in one hand and singing along to an old love song on the jukebox, her voice carrying over the clinking of coffee cups and morning chatter. One of the college students captured the moment on their phone. Ming twirling between tables, her voice clear and sweet, while expertly balancing plates and refilling coffee cups. She hit a perfect high note just as she slid a plate of eggs across the counter to Pop, who caught it without even looking up from his grill. "Just another morning at Sunshine Diner." Read the caption when the video was posted. Nobody expected it to reach millions of views within days. Morning shows wanted to interview her. 1 year after her album release, Ming stood outside Sunshine Diner on a crisp morning, holding a set of keys that felt both familiar and strange in her hands. After finishing her first successful national tour, she had made an offer to buy the diner. Not to change it, but to preserve the magic that had changed her life. "You sure about this?" Pop asked, though his proud smile already knew the answer. He'd been running the place for 20 years and was ready to step back, but worried about its future. Until Ming stepped in. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," Ming replied, unlocking the door just like she had thousands of times before during her early morning shifts. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't just coming to work. She was coming home to build something new. The renovation started small. The worn-out booths were reupholstered, but kept their vintage charm. The counter got a fresh polish, but stayed exactly where it had always been. The biggest change was the small stage in the corner, properly built now, with its own lighting and sound system. Above it hung a sign that read, "Dreams served daily," in warm neon light. Every month, the diner now hosted new voice nights, where aspiring singers could perform while customers enjoyed their meals. Ming made sure each performer got the same thing she once did: a chance, a warm meal, and an audience willing to listen. The tips jar became a dream fund, helping local musicians with recording costs or music lessons. Pop stayed on as head cook, teaching Ming all the secret recipes. "Can't have the place without the food that feeds the soul," he'd say, showing her exactly how much cinnamon went into his famous apple pie. The regular customers still came, now bringing their children and grandchildren to hear the stories of how their favorite singer started out serving coffee right where they sat. One quiet afternoon, a young waitress was humming while wiping down tables, just like Ming used to do. Ming watched from behind the counter, remembering herself at that age. The girl had real talent. You could hear it in the way she naturally found harmonies with the jukebox songs. "Hey," Ming called her over. "How would you feel about performing our next new voice night?" The girl's eyes widened. "Oh no, I couldn't. I'm just a waitress." Ming smiled, remembering how many times she'd said those exact words. "Honey, I'm going to tell you something my old friend Pop once told me. Being just a waitress is like saying the sun is just a star. We're the first faces people see in the morning, the last ones they see at night. We serve more than food. We serve hope, comfort, and sometimes, if we're lucky, we get to serve our dreams too." The diner became more than just a restaurant or a music venue. It became a place where dreams were taken seriously, where every person who walked through the door was treated like they might be on their way to something extraordinary. The walls, once bare except for old photos, now held a growing collection of signed albums and photos, not just Ming's, but from every performer who'd started on their small stage and gone on to chase their dreams. On special nights, when the mood was just right, Ming would still put on an apron and serve coffee while singing. Her regular customers would beam, remembering the days before the fame. New customers would watch in amazement as this chart-topping artist poured their coffee with the same care she'd always shown. "Why do you still do this?" a reporter once asked during an interview at the diner. "You don't need to anymore." Ming looked around at the full tables, at Pop teaching a new cook his secret pancake flip, at the young waitress practicing her scales while restocking sugar packets. She thought about all the nights she'd spent here, dreaming of something bigger while serving plates of eggs and hash browns. "Need is a funny word," she said, picking up a coffee pot. "No, I don't need to do this anymore. But this place, these people, they believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. They gave me a stage when I didn't have one. They taught me that sometimes the longest way around is the best way home. So now, I get to do the same for others." She filled a customer's cup, humming along to the jukebox. Besides, she added with a warm smile, "Some of the best songs are still being written right here, between coffee refills and midnight conversations. And I wouldn't miss that for anything in the world." As if to prove her point, the young waitress started singing softly while cleaning nearby, her voice pure and unpolished and full of promise. Ming caught Pop's eye across the diner, and they shared a knowing look. The magic that had started her own journey was still alive and well, serving up dreams one cup of coffee at a time.